The arrowhead stood for Oklahoma, the T for Texas. Together they stood for the 36th Infantry Division. Before World War I was over, they stood for a lot more, for courage and fighting spirit.
Hello, I'm Dr. George Cressman, and I serve as the staff historian here at the Camp Landing Museum. Today I'm going to chat with you about the 36th Infantry Division, which was one of the 9 infantry divisions that trained here at Camp Landing. The 36th Infantry Division was the Texas National Guard, mobilized for federal service in World War II. The division served in both the Mediterranean and the European theaters during World War II. The 36th Infantry Division was the 3rd infantry division to come to Camp Landing during World War II. It arrived here at Camp Landing on the 10th of February, 1942. Prior to coming to Camp Landing, the 36th trained at Camp Boeing, where it had been mobilized for federal service. The division had participated in the 1941 Louisiana maneuvers, and while here at Camp Landing for a short time, it overlapped both the 31st and 43rd Infantry Division. Both those divisions moved out, and the 1st Infantry Division then came to Camp Landing at the same time the 36th was here. The 36th and the 1st Infantry Divisions participated in what I'll call local combat, as the 36th Division, living out its legacy as the Texas National Guard, came into Camp Landing. The men of the division immediately took over many of the bars in Stark, Jacksonville, and Gainesville. And they took over the jukeboxes, dominating the use of those jukeboxes to play their favorite song, The Yellow Rose of Texas. As the men of the 1st Infantry Division arrived, they took great umbrage at the frequent playing of The Yellow Rose of Texas. The 1st Infantry Division's reputation as the Big Red One and ready to fight at any time immediately began local combat with the 36th Division.
These are the boats you hear about on D-Day, the assault landing boats that run from the ship to the enemy beach.
The 36th Division transferred to Camp Edwards in Massachusetts, where their training continued. And the training schedule included amphibious assault training or amphibious assault attacks on Martha's Vineyard. Kind of a nice place to have to assault. The 36th then departed New York on the 2nd of April, 1943, headed to the Mediterranean theater, and in fact, they landed in North Africa. As they arrived in North Africa, French North Africa, on the 13th of April, 1943, the division continued to train in theater. But they also provided guards for a large number of German POW camps. The 36th was originally scheduled to take part in the invasion of Sicily, but General Patton vetoed their use. He wanted more experienced troops. And as a consequence, the 36th remained in North Africa. General Mark Clark, however, selected the 36th Division for the invasion of mainland Italy, the landing at Salerno. The 36th Division landed at Paestum and became the first U.S. division to land and engage in combat on continental Europe. 36 at Paestum fought off a large number of German attacks. They were greatly assisted in doing that by the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, but the division suffered 4,000 casualties in the invasion and was considered to have fought quite well. During the battle in mainland Italy, 4 members of the 36th Division were awarded the Medal of Honor. After a 6-week rest period, some more training, absorbing replacements, the division returned to combat in mid-November. They fought up the boot of Italy, capturing a number of mountains, and then fought an intense battle to capture the village of San Pietro. The 36th was ordered to cross the Rapido River. The battle is called, or the crossing is called, the Rapido River, and you'll find that in most of the histories, but it was actually misidentified. It was really the Gary River. But we'll leave it as the Rapido River because that's what most of the histories call it.
The Germans had prepared a new line of defense along the Rapido River, and they were waiting for us.
The division attacked across the river on the 20th of January 1944, but was bloodily repulsed by the German 15th Panzer Grenadier Division. The commander of the 36th Division, Frank Walker, had protested the orders to cross the river where General Clark ordered him to cross. He wanted to cross in an alternative place. General Clark ordered him to take up the crossing where General Clark had selected. There were continuing attempts to cross the Rapido River, and the 36th, 141st, and 143rd regiments were virtually destroyed. In 48 hours, the 36th Division had suffered 1,681 casualties. Although the division was close to being combat ineffective, it was not yet withdrawn. Next, the 36th joined the 34th Infantry Division for one of many assaults on the abbey at Monte Cassino, followed by a withdrawal from the lines on 12 March 1944. Following a rest period, and once again the assimilation of replacements, the 36th was ferried to the Anzio beachhead on the 22nd of May, 1944. Crossing the Anzio beachhead, the 36th drove north, captured Valletta on 1 June 1944, and then pushed north, continuing the drive towards Rome, where they met intense German opposition, but continued to slowly advance. The 36th was then withdrawn from combat to refit and train for yet another amphibious assault. On the 15th of August, 1944, as a part of the U.S. 7th Army, the 36th Division made an amphibious assault in southern France. Operation Dragoon was intended to provide a block for the U.S. And British troops driving eastward across France, a block to prevent the Germans from escaping. Operation Dragoon, the invasion of southern France, had originally been planned for 6 June, the same day as the Normandy invasion, but there were insufficient landing craft to allow that simultaneous invasion. So the southern France invasion, done with the 3rd, the 36th, and the 45th Infantry Divisions, which had all been withdrawn from Italy in order to make the southern France invasion. In an interesting move, as the 3rd Infantry Division drove north up the Rhone River Valley, the 36th sent Task Force Butler around the east of the Rhone River Valley, and the Task Force Butler formed a blocking position north of a town called Montelimar, and that formed a blocking position that allowed the 3rd Infantry Division to drive the Germans against the blockage. A massive number of Germans were captured, killed. Many pieces of equipment were destroyed in that block. One of the interesting events then with the 36th involves what was called a Lost Battalion. In September of 1944, the 36th Division was fighting in the Vosges Mountain, eastern France. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team, a new unit comprised of Japanese Americans, was attached. The 442nd was attached to the 36th Division on 30 September 1944. Interestingly, as the 442nd was composed of Nisei, or Japanese Americans, interestingly, the training place for those Japanese Americans who volunteered for Army service was Camp Landing. So many of the men in the 442nd had trained here at Camp Landing, as the 36th had done. A battalion of the 36th 141 Infantry Regiment had been ordered to advance into a thick wooded area near the French town of Bruyères. The battalion was surrounded by German troops and cut off. The men were isolated for a number of days, and the Japanese Americans, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, eventually were able to get to this lost battalion and rescue them. The first attempt to relieve the lost battalion had been thrown back by the Germans. Air supply or resupply was not successful. On the sixth day that the battalion had been trapped, the Germans threw an intense attack against the battalion, but were not able to break through. Finally, on the afternoon of the sixth day, Japanese-American PFC Sakamoto made contact with the lost battalion, and the men were rescued. Interestingly, PFC Sakamoto, the Japanese-American who made the first contact, commented that he didn't really know what to say to the men of the 36th when he found them. So his question of them was, "Do you need some cigarettes?" The 36th continued combat. They crossed the Meurthe River and then continued to fight through the Vosges Mountain, moving to Sainte-Marie-d'Aille and the Sainte-Marie Pass, and they broke out on the Alsatian Plain. Germans counterattacked on the 13th of December, 1944, but the 36th was able to hold. The division then resumed its offensive, pushed north along the Rhine River to Mannheim, and in fierce fighting on the approaches to Mannheim, the 143rd G Company was awarded a Presidential Unit Citation. And on the 3rd of January 1945, the 36th was taken out of combat for the first time since it had landed in southern France on 15 August 1944. Following an extended period of refitting and absorbing replacements, the division returned to combat in early March of 1945. They then liberated the Dachau concentration camps, a number of its subcamps. Another interesting event is men of the 142nd Regiment participated in defending Itter Castle. Castle Itter was in danger of being overrun by Waffen SS soldiers. The castle was important because it was a prison site for a large number of very important prisoners that the Germans were hoping to use for trading purposes, trading of prisoners. Realizing that that was not going to be possible, the Waffen SS was ordered to take the castle and kill all of the prisoners. In defending the castle, U.S. troops from the 142nd Regiment actually joined with troops from regular German Wehrmacht, from regular German army troops. This was the only time during World War II when German and U.S. soldiers fought together. fighting the SS. As German resistance continued to decline, the 36th Infantry Division moved into Austria. And interestingly, the 36th captured Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the commander of all German army forces on the Western Front. On the 8th of May, 1945, the 36th celebrated the end of the war in Europe. The division at that point was headquartered in Kufstein, Austria. The 36th Division had 227 days in combat, both in the Mediterranean and European theaters. Men of the division were awarded 14 Medals of Honor, 80 Distinguished Service Crosses, 2,354 Silver Stars, and 5,407 Bronze Stars. So thanks for joining us again to learn more about Camp Landings history. We most appreciate you watching these videos. I'd like to ask you to do two things. First, I'd like to ask you to come visit us at a museum. We've got a lot of stories to tell you about Camp Landings history, World War II history. Come visit us. The museum is open every day from noon to 4. Second, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our Camp Landing Museum channel on YouTube. You'll get advance notice when we post new videos. So for all of our staff here at Camp Landing and our terrific volunteers, this is Dr. George Gressman signing off.